Avery Thompson stared out the window of her corner office, watching the bustling streets of Chicago 20 stories below. At 28, she had already climbed to a senior position at one of the city's top advertising firms. Her life was a carefully crafted routine: early mornings at the gym, long days at the office, and evenings spent either working late or attending networking events. Weekends were for catching up on sleep and preparing for the week ahead. It was a driven, solitary existence, but Avery told herself it was worth it to achieve her ambitious career goals. She turned back to her computer, frowning slightly at her reflection in the dark screen. Her honey blonde hair was pulled back in its usual sleek ponytail, and her grey eyes looked tired behind her glasses. Avery made a mental note to get more sleep. She couldn't afford to look worn down in this competitive industry. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," Avery called, straightening her posture. Her assistant poked her head in. "Miss Thompson, Mr. Reeves wants to see you in his office." Avery nodded, smoothing her pencil skirt as she stood. "Thank you, Sarah. I'll head there now." She made her way down the hallway, heels clicking on the polished floor. Robert Reeves was the CEO of the firm and not someone to keep waiting. Avery had only interacted with him a handful of times since joining the company 3 years ago. Knocking lightly on his open door, Avery stepped into the spacious corner office. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Reeves?" The man behind the large mahogany desk looked up and smiled. "Ah, Avery, please, come in and have a seat." As she settled into one of the plush chairs across from him, Avery studied her boss. Robert Reeves cut an impressive figure, tall and broad-shouldered with salt and pepper hair and piercing blue eyes. At 45, he was still quite handsome and had a reputation as one of Chicago's most eligible bachelors. "I'll get right to the point," Reeves said, leaning forward. "We've just landed a major new client, Hartwell Industries. It's a huge account that could really put us on the map nationally. I want you to lead the creative team on this one." Avery's eyes widened. This was a massive opportunity. "Thank you, sir. I'm honoured you consider me for such an important project." Reeves waved off her thanks. "You've more than earned it with your work here. Now there is one complication. The CEO of Hartwell is bringing in his son Jacob to oversee things on their end. Apparently the kid just finished business school and Daddy Dearest wants to give him some real-world experience." He rolled his eyes. "I need you to keep a close eye on him. Make sure he doesn't screw anything up. Can you handle that?" "Of course," Avery assured him. "I'm sure I can manage him." "Good." Reeves stood, signalling the end of the meeting. "The kick-off meeting with Hartwell is next Monday. I expect great things from you on this, Avery." She left his office with her mind racing. This account could make or break her career. Avery was determined not to let anything or anyone stand in her way. The following Monday, Avery arrived at the office extra early to prepare for the Hartwell meeting. She had spent the weekend researching the company and brainstorming initial campaign ideas. As she organised her notes in the conference room, the door opened and a young man walked in. Avery looked up, startled. The man appeared to be around her age, with tousled dark hair and warm brown eyes. He was undeniably handsome, in a casual, easygoing way that contrasted sharply with the polished executives she usually encountered. "Oh, sorry," he said with a crooked smile. "I thought I was the first one here. I'm Jacob Hartwell." He extended his hand. Avery shook it, noting his firm grip. "Avery Thompson, I'm leading the creative team on your account." Recognition dawned in Jacob's eyes. "Ah, so you're the one my father warned me about. Said you'd be keeping me in line." His eyes twinkled with amusement. Avery felt herself bristle slightly. "I assure you, Mr. Hartwell, I take my work very seriously. I hope we can have a productive professional relationship." Jacob held up his hands in mock surrender. "Hey, no need to get defensive. I'm just here to learn and contribute however I can. And please, call me Jacob." Before Avery could respond, other team members began filtering into the room. She pushed aside her annoyance and focused on running an efficient, productive meeting. To her surprise, Jacob proved to be attentive and insightful, asking thoughtful questions and offering useful information about the company. By the end of the 2-hour session, Avery found herself revising her initial impression of him. As everyone filed out, Jacob lingered behind. "That was really impressive," he told Avery. I can see why my father was so excited to work with your firm." "Thank you," Avery replied, caught off guard by the sincerity in his voice. "I'm glad you found it helpful." "Maybe we could grab coffee sometime this week," Jacob suggested. "I'd love to pick your brain more about the industry." Avery hesitated. It wasn't unusual to meet with clients outside the office, but something about Jacob made her wary. "I suppose that would be all right," she said finally. "I'll have my assistant contact you to set something up." Jacob grinned. "Great, looking forward to it." As he left, Avery found herself smiling despite her best efforts. She quickly schooled her expression back to neutral. Jacob Hartwell might be charming, but she couldn't afford to let her guard down. There was too much riding on this account. Over the next few weeks, Avery threw herself into the Hartwell campaign. She worked long hours developing concepts and overseeing the team's progress. To her surprise, Jacob proved to be a valuable collaborator. He had a knack for identifying potential issues and offering creative solutions. Avery found herself looking forward to their meetings and strategy sessions. One evening, as they were wrapping up a particularly productive brainstorming session, Jacob leaned back in his chair with a sigh. "I don't know about you, but I'm starving. Want to grab dinner? There's a great little Italian place around the corner." Avery glanced at her watch, startled to see it was after 8 p.m. "Oh, I didn't realize how late it had gotten. I should probably head home." "Come on," Jacob cajoled. "We've been working hard. We deserve a break and some real food. My treat." Against her better judgment, Avery found herself agreeing. As they walked to the restaurant, she was struck by how easy it was to talk to Jacob outside of work. He asked about her background and listened attentively as she described growing up in a small Midwestern town and working her way through college. In turn, he shared stories of his own childhood as the son of a business mogul. Over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, their conversation flowed freely. Avery was surprised to find herself laughing more than she had in months. As the waiter cleared their plates, she realized with a start that nearly 2 hours had passed. "I should get going," Avery said reluctantly. "We both have an early meeting tomorrow." Jacob nodded, signaling for the check. "This was fun. We should do it again sometime." As they stood outside the restaurant saying goodbye, Avery felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. Jacob was standing close, too close for comfort. For a moment she thought he might try to kiss her. Instead, he simply squeezed her arm and said softly, "Good night, Avery. See you tomorrow." She watched him walk away, her heart pounding. What was happening to her? This was dangerous territory. Avery took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. Jacob was a client, nothing more. She couldn't afford to blur those lines. Despite her best efforts to maintain a professional distance, Avery found herself drawn to Jacob over the following weeks. Their working relationship deepened into a genuine friendship. She looked forward to his playful banter during meetings and the way his eyes lit up when he got excited about an idea. More and more often they found excuses to work late, ordering takeout and bouncing concepts off each other long after everyone else had gone home. One Friday evening they were huddled over Avery's desk reviewing some mock-ups when Jacob's hand brushed against hers. A jolt of electricity shot through her at the contact. Avery jerked her hand away, her cheeks flushing. Jacob looked at her intently. "Avery," he said softly, "I think we need to talk about what's happening between us." She stood abruptly, putting distance between them. "Nothing is happening," Avery said firmly. "We're colleagues, that's all." Jacob stood as well, moving closer. "Is that really all we are? Because I think we both know there's more to it than that." Avery's heart was racing. She knew she should shut this down immediately, but found herself rooted to the spot as Jacob approached. He reached out, gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Tell me you don't feel it too," he murmured. Instead of pulling away, Avery found herself leaning into his touch. Their eyes locked, and in that moment all her carefully constructed walls came crumbling down. Jacob cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly. Avery melted into the kiss, wrapping her arms around Jacob's neck as it deepened. All the tension and longing that had been building between them for weeks poured out. It was several long moments before they broke apart, both breathing heavily. Reality came crashing back, and Avery stumbled backwards. "We can't," she gasped. "This is wrong. You're a client, if anyone found out." Jacob reached for her hand. I don't care about any of that. Avery, I'm falling for you. Hard. Aren't you tired of denying how we feel? Tears pricked at Avery's eyes. Of course I have feelings for you. But my career? Your father's company? There's too much at stake. We have to stop this now before it goes any further. Pain flashed across Jacob's face, but he nodded slowly. If that's really what you want. But Avery, I'm not giving up on us. I'll wait as long as it takes. He brushed a soft kiss across her forehead before leaving. Avery sank into her chair, burying her face in her hands. What had she done? The next few weeks were torturous for Avery. She did her best to maintain a professional facade around Jacob, but the air between them crackled with unresolved tension. She threw herself into work, staying later and later at the office to avoid being alone with her thoughts. One night, she was startled by a knock on her office door well after 9 p.m. She looked up to see Robert Reeves standing in the doorway. "Burning the midnight oil again, I see," he said with a smile. "Walk with me?" Avery followed him out onto the deserted floor. Reeves was silent for a few moments before speaking. "You've been doing exceptional work on the Hartwell account. I'm impressed." "Thank you, sir," Avery replied. "The team has been working very hard." Reeves stopped walking and turned to face her. "It's more than that. You have a real gift, Avery. I see big things in your future here." He stepped closer, resting a hand on her arm. "In fact, I've been thinking it's time we got to know each other better. Perhaps over dinner this weekend." Avery's stomach dropped as she realized what he was implying. She gently extricated her arm from his grasp. "Mr. Reeves, I'm flattered, but I don't think that would be appropriate." His expression hardened. "I'm not proposing anything untoward, Avery, but surely you understand how things work in this business. A little personal connection can go a long way in advancing one's career." Avery felt sick. Was this what it took to succeed in this world? Compromising her integrity and values? She straightened her spine and looked Reeves in the eye. "I'm sorry, but my answer is no. I hope we can continue to have a positive working relationship, but anything beyond that is off the table." Reeves' face flushed with anger. "I see. Well, don't come crying to me when you hit the glass ceiling. I was trying to do you a favor." He stalked off, leaving Avery shaken. She gathered her things and left the office, her mind reeling. Everything she had worked for suddenly felt tainted. Was this the price of success? Without consciously deciding to, Avery found herself heading to Jacob's apartment. She hesitated outside his door for several long moments before finally knocking. Jacob answered, surprise evident on his face. "Avery, is everything okay?" She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. Jacob immediately pulled her into a hug. "Come inside, tell me what happened." Avery poured out the whole story. Reeves' proposition, her fears about her career, the growing realization that she was sacrificing her happiness for a hollow version of success. Jacob listened intently, his jaw clenching in anger when she described Reeves' behavior. When she finished, Jacob took her hands in his. "Avery, listen to me. You are brilliant and talented. You don't need to compromise yourself to succeed. Any company would be lucky to have you." She gave him a watery smile. "I've been so foolish, Jacob, pushing you away, denying how I feel. I was so focused on my career that I forgot what really matters in life." Jacob cupped her face gently. "It's not too late. We can figure this out together." This time when they kissed, Avery didn't pull away. She poured all her pent-up emotion into it, finally allowing herself to feel everything she had been suppressing. They stumbled towards the bedroom, hands roaming and clothes falling away. As they made love, Avery felt truly alive for the first time in years. All her doubts and fears melted away in Jacob's embrace. In the aftermath, they lay tangled together, Avery's head resting on Jacob's chest as he stroked her hair. "What do we do now?" Avery asked softly. Jacob pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Whatever feels right to you, but I meant what I said before. I'm all in, Avery. I love you." Avery's heart soared at his words. "I love you too," she whispered. They spent the weekend holed up in Jacob's apartment, talking for hours and making up for lost time. By Sunday evening, they had formulated a plan. Avery would resign from the advertising firm first thing Monday morning. She had savings to tide her over, and Jacob was confident he could help her find a new position through his connections. As for their relationship, they agreed to be open about it. Jacob would tell his father, and they would face whatever consequences came together. It wouldn't be easy, but they were committed to making it work. Monday morning found Avery striding purposefully into Robert Reeves' office. He looked up with a scowl. "Miss Thompson, I trust you've reconsidered our conversation from the other night?" Avery smiled serenely. "Actually, sir, I'm here to tender my resignation, effective immediately." Reeves' jaw dropped. "What? You can't be serious. What about the Hartwell account?" "I'm sure the team is more than capable of handling it," Avery replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some things to pack up." She turned on her heel and walked out, leaving Reeves spluttering behind her. As she packed up her office, Avery felt lighter than she had in years. For the first time in her adult life, she was prioritizing her own happiness over others' expectations. Jacob was waiting for her outside the building. He pulled her into a fierce hug. "I'm so proud of you," he murmured. Avery squeezed him tight. "Thank you for giving me the courage to do this." He grinned down at her. "Ready for our next adventure?" Avery nodded, slipping her hand into his. As they walked off together, she reflected on how much her life had changed in just a few short days. She had always defined herself by her career ambitions, believing that success and personal fulfillment were mutually exclusive. Now she realized that true happiness came from being true to herself and following her heart. There would be challenges ahead, no doubt, but with Jacob by her side, Avery felt ready to face whatever came next. As they walked hand in hand down the bustling Chicago street, she realized that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change and adjustment. True to his word, Jacob spoke to his father about their relationship. William Hartwell was initially skeptical, concerned about the potential conflict of interest and the impact on the advertising campaign. However, after meeting with Avery and seeing the genuine connection between her and his son, he grudgingly gave his blessing. Avery's resignation from the firm caused quite a stir in the advertising world. Rumours flew about why such a rising star would suddenly leave a prestigious position. Robert Reeves attempted to spin the story in his favour, implying that Avery couldn't handle the pressure of a major account. But Avery held her head high, refusing to engage in petty gossip or recriminations. With Jacob's support and networking, Avery soon found herself fielding multiple job offers. She was surprised to discover that her reputation in the industry was stronger than she'd realised. After careful consideration, she accepted a position with a smaller, more progressive agency that aligned with her values. The new role offered her more creative freedom and a better work-life balance. As the dust settled on her professional transition, Avery and Jacob's relationship continued to deepen. They moved in together, blending their lives and learning to navigate the challenges of a serious partnership. There were arguments and misunderstandings, of course, but they always came back to the strong foundation of trust and mutual respect they had built. 1 year after that fateful night in Jacob's apartment, he proposed during a sunset picnic in Millennium Park. Avery said yes without hesitation, tears of joy streaming down her face. As they celebrated with champagne, surrounded by the beauty of the city they both loved, Avery marvelled at how differently her life had turned out from what she had once planned. Their wedding was a joyous affair, bringing together their families and friends to celebrate their love. William Hartwell gave a surprisingly heartfelt toast, admitting that Avery had proven him wrong and become like a daughter to him. Even some of Avery's former colleagues attended, including Sarah, her old assistant, who had since been promoted to account manager. As Avery and Jacob swayed together during their first dance, she leaned in close and whispered, "Thank you for helping me find the courage to follow my heart." Jacob smiled, pulling her closer. "Thank you for taking a chance on us. You've made me the happiest man in the world." In the years that followed, Avery's career flourished in ways she never could have anticipated. Free from the cutthroat atmosphere of her previous firm, she rediscovered her passion for creativity and innovation. She became known for spearheading socially conscious campaigns and mentoring young women in the industry. Jacob, too, grew into his role at Hartwell Industries, bringing fresh ideas and a more modern approach to the company. Together, they became a power couple in Chicago's business world, but always made time for each other and their growing family. 5 years after their wedding, Avery sat in the nursery of their home, rocking their newborn daughter. As she gazed down at the sleeping infant, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought about the driven, lonely woman she had once been, so focused on climbing the corporate ladder that she had nearly missed out on true happiness. Jacob appeared in the doorway, smiling softly at the sight of his wife and child. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked quietly, coming to stand beside them. Avery looked up at him, her heart full of love. "I was just thinking about how grateful I am for everything that's happened. Even the difficult parts, they all led me here, to you and to her." Jacob leaned down to kiss her gently. "I'm grateful too, every single day." As they stood together in the quiet nursery, Avery felt a profound sense of peace and contentment. Her life hadn't turned out anything like she had planned all those years ago in her corner office. It was messier, more complicated, and infinitely more fulfilling than she could have ever imagined. She had learned that true success wasn't measured in promotions or accolades, but in the depth of one's relationships and the impact one had on others. By opening her heart to love and vulnerability, she had found a richness in life that no career achievement could match. Avery knew there would be more challenges ahead. Balancing her career with motherhood would be a new kind of test, and she and Jacob would face their share of obstacles. But she was no longer afraid of the unknown. She had learned to embrace change and trust in the strength of her relationships. As she placed her sleeping daughter in the crib, Avery made a silent promise. She would always strive to be true to herself and to nurture the connections that truly mattered. She would teach her daughter to value integrity over ambition and to never be afraid of following her heart. Turning off the light, Avery took Jacob's hand and they walked out of the nursery together. The future stretched out before them, full of possibility and promise. Whatever came next, they would face it as a team, stronger together than they ever could have been apart. Avery's journey had taught her that sometimes the most forbidden paths lead to the most beautiful destinations. By daring to cross the lines she had once drawn for herself, she had discovered a life more rewarding than she had ever dreamed possible. As she drifted off to sleep that night, wrapped in Jacob's arms, Avery knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be.